Hello, everyone, and welcome to my review of the film The Incredibles 2. This movie is directed by Brad Bird, as was the original film. And if you don't know already, Brad Bird is quite an amazing and impressive director. And if you haven't heard of him, you've probably seen some of his films and not known they were directed by Brad Bird because he has such a kind of diverse array of films that he's done. So if you've ever seen the film Iron Giant, Tomorrowland, Ratatouille, or even Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, you've seen a Brad Bird film, and of course, additionally, Incredibles and now The Incredibles 2. Okay, this was definitely a movie I was nervous going into because The Incredibles is a film that's so superbly important to kind of all of our childhoods, and it was one of my favorite animated movies, and to this date, it is one of my favorite animated films. Some of my nervousness definitely went away when I, saw the critics, lauding it and saying, a lot of them even saying that it's even better than the original Incredibles. So I was more excited going into the film once I'd seen kind of all the reviews. So without further ado, let's talk about some of the things I really liked about The Incredibles 2 because this is a really phenomenal film and a sequel that really lived up. So first thing I want to talk about is kind of the action in this movie because it's really not a superhero movie and this is kind of an animated superhero film without action. And honestly, the action in this film was amazing. For me personally, it was even better than the original Incredibles action sequences. What I love about the action sequences in both of the Incredibles, and particularly in this film, is how amazingly, kind of sleek and glossy they look. And a lot of these are some really stylish and slick action sequences as well. So a lot of these action sequences have kind of really big high stakes and also have this very nice glossy look to them that honestly make them feel something almost out of a James Bond movie. And I think that's just proof that animation is just a medium and you can really do anything with it. The Incredibles 2 features some of the most brilliant action sequences I've seen in animation in a very long time. And it's definitely no surprise to me that it was The Incredibles 2 and that it was Brad Bird who would bring that just screen into life. There's some great action sequences involving a motorcycle and a train, and I don't want to spoil too much, but it's definitely some of the best animation and animated action sequences I've ever seen. Really, honestly, and certainly a lot better than the first Incredibles. And kind of that dynamic, kind of slick, glossy style also really adds to kind of the feel of the film because honestly, The Incredibles is a very stylish film. Even the first one was very stylish. And Incredibles 2, I would in fact argue, is even more stylish in terms of its visual look. And this movie, in terms of visual splendor and kind of from a technical visual point of view, is absolutely amazing. It is a very stylish film and very. The animation has a very sleek quality to it that I really enjoyed. And of course, the first Incredibles also deals with a lot of different themes. Incredibles 2 follows suit with kind of that trend. And what I love about this franchise is how many kind of complex themes that both films have dealt with, and this film in particular kind of deals with some honestly kind of timely themes about the law, and as well as kind of what it means, kind of that conflict I would say between being practical and being a realist versus being an idealist, which are really honestly amazing themes to explore in a superhero movie, and certainly a lot more difficult to do, however, in a kids' animated superhero film. And yet, Brad Bird is such a great director, and the script of this film is so strong that those things kind of just come into the film very naturally. I will say they kind of feel on the nose from time to time, and a lot of the themes aren't necessarily conveyed through subtext, but rather conveyed through dialogue. Thankfully, the dialogue is very intelligently written and very expertly crafted, so it really comes out through that dialogue, kind of feeling on the nose. But because the dialogue is so well written, it is really well done, and certainly very surprising to see that kind of material in a in a kids movie. But at this point, I think from Brad Bird and Pixar and the Incredibles franchise, I wouldn't expect anything less. In terms of characters in this movie, Elastigirl, of course, has some of the greatest kind of screen time in this movie, and she's kind of supposed to be the main character and central character of this film. And that was such a phenomenal and just great decision to take in this movie. She was kind of a side character in the first film. It's mostly focused on Mr. Incredible in that film. But we get to see kind of a different side of Mr. Incredible in this film, as well as a different side of Elastigirl. we kind of get to see Mr. Incredible's kind of his relationships with the rest of the family while we get Elastigirl in action, which I think doing that and having that choice, creative choice in the second film was really great because you kind of cover all sides of these characters, and I really appreciated that. Violet as well gets a lot more screen time in this movie, and I thought that the kind of relationship between Violet and Mr. Incredible was really well done and really sweet. And of course, there's Jack Jack, who provides most of the visual humor and slapstick humor in this film. And that's another thing in this movie is that compared to the first film, there's a lot more visual humor and slapstick humor and just overall more comedy. Um, for me, actually, that kind of worked. You would think that the comedy would be distracting from the rest of the film. For me, that part of the movie actually really worked, and the comedy kind of made the film a little bit more lighthearted than the original one. But I felt that it fit right into place, and because the script was so strong, it found a good place to kind of be in the movie, and the comedy didn't necessarily hamper the film for me at all. Overall, The Incredibles 2 is a really worthy follow up to the original Incredibles. For me, it's not as good as the original Incredibles, partly probably because, I have such a great attachment to that first film. But I think that this movie isn't quite as ambitious as the first film as well. It's a little bit more on the forgettable side than the first film, because I just feel that the first Incredibles, dealt with a lot more mature themes and through a lot more subtext, and this movie doesn't quite get to that point. Um, but this movie is definitely very good, and as I said, it deals with a lot of timely themes, and it's also just perfect popcorn blockbuster summer entertainment. There's a lot of action, a lot of comedy, some really good, from a visual standpoint, this movie is amazing. I saw this film in IMAX. The action sequences were just popping off of the screen. It's really a larger than life film, and what I love most about this movie and the original Incredibles is kind of just the attention to characters. And this is a movie that could have easily completely skimped on character development and just gone all out on the action, been a bigger, better, sequel that's has way more action. And the movie instead decides to focus more on the characters, their intentions, their personalities, things that you wouldn't necessarily see in a bad animated or cartoon or kids film. And it treats its characters with a lot of respect, and I have a lot of respect for Brad Bird for treating his characters with a lot of respect. I'm putting them before the action, and that's not to say the action in this movie isn't amazing. As I said many times in this review, it is amazing, but I always feel in both movies, and particularly in The Incredibles, first one, but also in Incredibles 2, that Brad Bird kind of has the characters at number one and the action at number two, and that's something that I've really always loved about the Incredibles franchise, and I think that's what people are going to remember both of these films for doing so well, is that characters first and action second, and that really shows in this film as well. So overall, guys, I'm going to give The Incredibles 2 an A. This is a really fun summer film, and be sure to see it with your entire family. It's a ton of fun and really, really well directed. So if you like this video, guys, be sure to see more and subscribe, and I'll have more videos out coming for you guys real soon.